Hello, good morning, everyone. Welcome as you start coming on in. It is Banner and Backbone's window of discussion. I'm Nick Perro, co founder here at Banner and Backbone. Um, just welcoming everyone on in as you start coming in for the show this morning. Good morning. It's probably going to be a small show today and a little bit shorter than normal. I have a show afterwards, and as you can see right now, it's just me. So, good morning, everyone. Welcome in. Hope everyone has had a decent start to their new year. I know there's been a lot of discussion going on and a lot of things happening over the last months, or it feels like months, sorry, last days. That is crazy. And I want to touch a little bit on what happened and what's going on in Venezuela and what that possibly means in the long run, at least for the US and citizens in the US, and how we need to discuss it and continue keeping it in the way we think and the way we talk, but also in ensuring that we don't take some of these next steps, and working as communities to make sure that we don't allow, say, the full hemisphere takeover by the US, because that'd be that would be bad. Um, and so to frame this discussion, I actually I'm going to pull up a link for an article that came out on Centered America this weekend after the event that um, Sherrod Sweeney put a lot of effort into, um, and a lot of discussion around. Um, and it is regime change in Venezuela, why the truth is more complicated than good or bad. So, good morning, everyone. Keep coming on in as you are. Hit that heart. Um, we are going to do a shorter discussion today, but it's going to be a discussion around Venezuela, and intentful actions, and how we can focus our efforts towards ensuring that we make it known that the American populace is against invasion of sovereign nations, and is against the invasion of NATO allies and is against the invasion of American hemisphere wide domination efforts. Um, and so we're going to discuss a little bit of the article that um, the Centered America team put out over the weekend with support from myself and Banner and Backbone here and Shane Urich. So, dropping the link in the chat, I'll also put it up as a QR code for everybody to be able to see and link from. And just give me a second as I put the QR code up. Okay, so and here's our QR code. It's I just put it as Venezuelan change for the name, and I'll even share the screen for it, so that everyone can view what's going on here. I'll do it with this one. And remove that as I do some screen edits. Sorry, get things moved around on the screen here. And I'll resize this so it's a little bit bigger and closer. Okay, so we're going to go over a little bit of what happened in Venezuela, and I'm doing this framing under the guise of intent and actionable intent. So, why I'm bringing up the Venezuela stuff is it's really important. The U.S. struck Venezuela in a raid that resulted in at least 80 deaths at this point that we know of. Some of those are military, some of those are police, others of those are civilian. And so we have to keep that very center in mind, is that the US did a raid and we caused 80 deaths to get one person, two people actually, because we then kidnapped President Nicolas Maduro of Venezuela and his wife for policing matters, for US law. Like, we were enforcing a US indictment, not an international one, not a global one, not one from the international community, the ICC, the International Criminal Court system. We were just enforcing a US authorized indictment of criminal gun charges, and not even about drugs. So, good morning, everyone. As you come on in, we're obviously talking about Venezuela and the debacle that is ongoing now because of that, and our ownership idea from the US, where we are now discussing it we um, as we are now taking over and we are corporatizing and owning the US and running it through Marco Rubio and Pete Hegseth. That's what it, and probably Shadow President Stephen Miller. Like, that's what is going to happen until they're going to try that. We'll see if the Venezuelans play along. I don't think they will in the end, because we kidnapped Nicolas Maduro, and then his vice president, the entire cabinet, and senior leaders all stayed, and they are Maduro supporters. Obviously, they were in his cabinet and in his regime and presidency, and their government is still intact. So we didn't do anything. We just killed 80 civilians, bombed a bunch of areas in Caracas, including one of the scientific research areas, because it had communication systems, and was probably doubling, much like ours, many of ours probably do, doubled as a military communication site and system and amplifier. And so we bombed it. We bombed a scientific research center just to destroy the communication system, and we destroyed innocent lives. We hit neighborhoods, and there's been at least 80 people who have died. So we have to keep that in mind as we go through all this. It is a law enforcement action, not a military one, and that's a big difference too. The president is framing this as a law enforcement action, which means we're just applying US law to international individuals without applying US law at home. Um, what do you, David? I'm unsure what you mean by where. We're talking about the indictment and capture of Nicolas Maduro from Venezuela, the kidnapping of him, and the indictment out of, I think the indictment was out of the Southern District of New York's federal office. Oh, okay. No worries, David. Just wanted to make sure we were clear. Out of Venezuela, and Southern District of New York, is the indicting, I believe, the indicting office for the charges, like gun smuggling and gun possession and something else. Nothing about it's not about drugs. It's not about drugs. They lied about the framing, which means all of the original boat strikes need to be further questioned by Congress. And I hope Senator Mark Kelly and Senator Tammy Duckworth are continuing their efforts, even with all of the bullshit. And that they continue to investigate what's going on and demand oversight. Because if this was about oil and not about drugs, you do not get to come in and go, hey, we're going to start a quote armed conflict on narco terrorism, and then go into another country just for oil and natural resources and then say that out loud. Well, if that was the intent, you should have said that when you declared an armed conflict, was that we were in an armed conflict for oil. because the lie will prove to be the downfall in all of this. The lie is what is going to hurt them and help us and help the people of Venezuela and get us out of there in the end. So what do we know is, like I said, is we kidnapped President Nicolas Maduro out of Venezuela. Do I think he's a good person? I don't know. Yes, no, I don't care. We have worse people in our country running our country. Venezuela had social health systems and social services that and healthcare and education that actually cared about its population. We have a country run by a pedophile and an international criminal organization. So tell me who's worse. Tell me, like, if that's what they want, um, if that's how they want to frame it, then somebody should come into the US, kidnap our president, vice president, and their families and all of that, and everybody in the world should celebrate, because um that's what they're saying the precedent is. And I want to stop all of us in the chat from saying it's a distraction. It's not a fucking distraction. We killed 80 people and bombed a country and kidnapped a sovereign head of state. That is not a distraction. Both are terrible, both are true, and both are equally part of the same thing. Epstein is leverage. Epstein is what we know about, like, Venezuela is important, just as important, because it's part of their plan. The Epstein stuff is equally as important, if not more important, yes, but it's not a distraction from Epstein. We have to stop saying that it's a distraction, because not everything is a distraction. We're past distraction phase. Distraction was when they started doing, like, rubber bullets at ice facilities and no, it's not semantics, unfortunately. When we say distraction, it's not semantics. We're downplaying the significance of the actions. We also, I think people need to stop saying that these people cannot think past 30 seconds or one day or 5 minutes. They have a 40-year plan that they enacted, and now they're running Project 2025 as a playbook. They have a strategy. They they plan this all out. It's not that they cannot think past 30 seconds. Maybe Donald Trump can't think past himself, but everyone around him who is running the actual regime and doing the actions and hurting innocent people here in the US and abroad has a plan. They're doing it through a plan. Like, it's it's clear to me anyways that this is not a distraction. Kidnapping a head of state is not a distraction. Yeah, and over we've also sunk over 30 boats. We've killed, like, over 100 people in the ocean. We've left survivors stranded who are probably now dead. We've hunted down 3 oil tankers. We're wasting millions and millions and millions and millions of taxpayer dollars for nothing. That's what I want. That's my opinion on all of this, is we're wasting it on nothing. We are wasting it on stuff, but, like, in the end, it is nothing that we're doing that's useful or good. We're going into Venezuela because oil and rare earth minerals is part of the techno-fascist takeover of the west of our hemisphere, of the Americas. It is not a distraction. This is the tech bro plan. This is what the tech bros want. They need the oil and natural resources, long term and short term, to power AI data centers. They need it for the chips. They need it for the everything that they're doing to make AI data centers, to make the graphics cards and the GPU cards. Tech bros want all of the Americas. The next part is who comes out, who wins. So, in terms of, like, in order of precedence for what their step-by-step plan is. We already know their plan. It's Project 2025. Let's get back to Venezuela real quick because this is part of the plan. This was step one of the invasion. They said they needed and were going to put out an attack on Venezuela and overthrow the leader. They said that in Project 2025. They're going step by step by step. Yes, Epstein is important. And starting World War III is equally as important because they tie together. Because Donald Trump is using wars not as distractions, but as ways to unify his base, to get money and extract resources in the near term and long term, to assert authoritarian control over the military, to consolidate leadership potential and leadership ownership over the military, because the more actions they continue to take without the military and without its leaders actively pushing back in a public way, you'll start to see the dwindling down of senior officials, and it will be Hitler's germ generals. And yes, they will come at Donald Trump. We have to pay attention to all of it. We cannot say any of it is a distraction anymore. The US going into Venezuela and with no clear, like Sherrod said in this right at the beginning here, is it is not clear who is actually governing Venezuela right now. The Venezuelan people have have instated the vice president as their new president. However, she has also said that she still thinks the real president is Maduro, and she's just acting in his stead. And she's going to follow his mandates. She is part of his cabinet. She is a loyalist to him, as she should be as the vice fucking president of her country, is a loyalist in a lot of ways to her party and her cab and her administration. And who am I to say if they're brutal dictators or not? We have concentration camps in the US. We have people being disappeared and trafficked in the US. So who am I to say that another country is doing something wrong when we are actively exporting authoritarianism, white supremacy, and fascism to the rest of the world? That's what we're doing. We want domination and dominionism over the world, specifically over the Americas first, which is step one, Venezuela, and why it matters. There's mixed reactions. Of course, people are gonna let's staying on Venezuela and the article that Shared had put out. Staying on Venezuela is some people say we are free. The dictatorship has fallen. Notice they're in Chile, not in Venezuela. They are Venezuelan in Chile, but not in Venezuela. I spoke to Elizabeth Raven, a Venezuelan in Venezuela, and her response was, I might not have liked him at times, but I wouldn't want him removed like that. That's not how we do it. That's not how we want to do it. We've had a history of that happening because the US in general, for the last like 60 years, has aggressively used South America, sorry, non US or Canadian countries as training grounds for the CIA to overthrow whatever leaders they want and attempt to do empire building. We're really bad at empire building in the US, really, really bad at it. And Elizabeth Raven and I just talked about the similarities between us and Venezuelans. And guess what, y'all? They're basically just like us. Like there's no difference in who these folks are compared to us because they're just normal folks. Most of them, and if you notice, none of them want to get rid of their social systems. Whereas in the US, our hardliners hate us. Our hardliners don't care about any of our worth and value. The Venezuelans, from what I have heard so far, is that they like even internationally, these hardliners, they want to, even if they want to come in on more authoritarian wings, they're not getting rid of their social services. Like, they're at least taking care of their people in a way that the US is not. The US doesn't care about its own people. The US doesn't care about anyone outside of the US itself. It doesn't care about the global populace. Our government cares about one thing, especially right now. The white supremacist fascist regime that is in the US government wants money, power, and that's it. They're greedy, and that's it. That's all they care about is corporate interest and oligarchy. That's what they want. This is step one from Project 2025 for the invasions of the Americas. They said they were going to take out the leader of Venezuela and overthrow the government and now run it. And that's what they're doing. They're going to try and run Venezuela. We're really bad at empire building with good people in charge. We're going to be worse at it with these people because Stephen Miller, Russell Vought, Pete Hegseth, like Marco Rubio, they're not smart enough individually to do this work. And they're not smart enough to put together competent teams to do needed work to actually do empire building. Even our good empire builders were bad at it in the US. We're bad at it outside of the continental US and Alaska and Hawaii and some of our territories that we seized during World War II. That was part of our empire building. So we have done some, but on the whole, we're really bad at it. So my thought, we should have stayed the fuck out of Venezuela, and our congressional leaders need to demand to continue oversight on Venezuela and the Caribbean and the actions that led up to it, because this was stated as a war on narco-terrorism. Yet the only result is talking about oil. And in the US, we are still a system with laws and with a judicial branch that outside of the Supreme Court is holding up pretty well. It's holding up pretty well, which is good. And that means we have laws and rules that still need to be followed. And part of that is congressional oversight. And the Senate, at least the Democrats in the Senate, such as Mark Kelly and Tammy Duckworth, are continuing their work to ensure that the oversight is done and the truth is known. Because you cannot state and start an armed conflict on one thing and then expect to get away with it for another. George Bush tried that, and we got into 20 fucking years of war in Afghanistan and Iraq, and it led to nothing. It led to millions of us having fucking issues because of it. It led to millions of us being disabled, having new conditions, and having our lives shortened. I've had friends die randomly through cancers that just came out of nowhere because they went to Afghanistan or Iraq multiple times. They just died. It has caused so much damage and trauma. We have a failure in jungles too. We have a history of failure in jungles, and the Venezuelans are going to be no different. If we have to go in there to control a nation like this, we have to put boots on the ground. And we're really bad in countries where there are forests, where they are very deeply the jungle wants to kill you. Venezuela is going to be Vietnam on steroids. So let's go into some of the emotions that are coming out of Venezuela real quick. Hey, also, if you saw him come in the chat, good morning, Zev Shalev. Welcome, my friend. Please go and subscribe to him. Scroll up on the chat if you're in Substack and hit his name on the Substack chat. You'll be able to subscribe right from there. He is an incredible reporter, investigative journalist. He's also a friend who's doing a lot of really good work and is really putting. He and Ellie Leonard are going to be the heroes of our generation in a lot of ways. And everyone who's supporting and has done so much work around the Epstein um, files and what is coming out of that. And that's one of the reasons I can talk about Venezuela without having to always talk about Epstein, because we have folks who that is right now their life's work. Like, they are putting in life's work to ensure that we take down the pedophile criminal regime that is controlling the US. Do I think Nicolas Maduro was a good person? No. Do I feel do some people feel relief that he is gone? Yes. Do some people feel dread? Also, yes, because it causes fucking instability. Do I feel like we should have judged Nicolas Maduro in any way, shape, or form? No, because we need to take care of our own house first. And so this episode is actions with intent. And so my intent is to continue to talk truth about how we can take down this system of white supremacy and the system of exporting it and exporting our flaws and our authoritarianism to other countries. Because that's what we're doing. Our empire building is authoritarianism building. It is not democracy building. So we are taking down a democratically elected president. There have been um, I I talked to folks like T from This Will Hold, and we're talking about like the fact that there are claims that Nicolas Maduro stole the election in Venezuela, yet there has been no official audit done or recounts done. We cannot verify that, but the Democrats in the U.S. and Republicans all stay on a single message of Nicolas Maduro stole the election and is a brutal dictator. Will I say he's not? No. But I'm also not going to just buy the CIA lie that he is, or the US propagandized lie that he is. We see Latin American and South American countries in the US through the lens of white supremacy. They are south of the border. That is a derogatory term in the US, is if you're south of the border, you're lesser, you're not as good, you're other than. You aren't white, is what that means. We have been exporting white nationalism to other countries for generations. The Nazis were inspired by the Confederacy and the KKK. We exported fascism to Germany and created Nazis. That is part of our sin as the Americans. Do I feel shame and guilt? No, because I didn't do it. Do I accept that that's part of our history and we need to reconcile that and we need to fix it? Abso-fucking-lutely. So both reactions, as Sherrod points out in this, are true. Is some people feel relief, some people feel dread. Just like in the US, if somebody say were to come and kidnap our head of state, some people would feel relief. Many people in the US would feel relief. At the same time, almost every person will feel a sense of dread. Probably every person will feel a sense of dread because the uncertainty that comes next. What happens next is always a dreadful question when your president or your leader gets kidnapped by another country. US world order and post World War II world order established by NATO and the UN was to prevent this. Yes, Hitler was inspired by Mussolini, but we exported the Nazis themselves got their ideas of fascism from the KKK. They were inspired by the KKK. That's known history in the US. We also had German American Bund, which was the pro-Nazi party in the US that actively worked in conjunction prior to World War II with Nazi leadership and Nazi members to Nazify the US. Those were summer camps. Those were white-only summer camps, which just so we're I'll come real close and say this. Those were replaced by religious Bible camps and, say, Mormon all-white kids summer camps. German American Bund never went away. it rebranded as Christian nationalism. Don't send your children to Bible camp in the summer unless you know that that church actively promotes equity, equality, and dignity for everyone. We need to get used to. My intent is to continue to call out the shit that is going on. Yeah, watch the PBS special, Nazi Town, USA. It's all about the German American Bund. We're getting a little off topic here, but that's okay because I like these types of tangents. And with you guys asking questions in the chat, it's great to be able to discuss this and get some information out. And so my intent is to be clear on the information I provide, be in and ensure that you guys, as always, have actions that we can take as a community to push back on this. One of the reasons that I work so closely with Centered America is because they are a 501c4 organization. Banner and Backbone and Centered America work side by side. Um, we are friends. Sherrod Swaney and I are friends. Gavin Favor and I have become friends. We are a group of individuals who want to see positive, equitable change that is working for people, for our country, for our citizenry, for the international community. And part of that is because Centered America is a 501c4 organization. They are able to put in legislation. They're able to model and submit legislation on the state and federal levels. And my intent is to support them in whatever way I can to get purposeful legislation put in for the US so that we can break these systems of white supremacy that we are exporting to other countries. Part of that is having the intent to see if we can change laws around the size of Congress, what our war powers resolutions are, how vacations are managed, how their pay structure is done. Simple things that everyday Americans care about: healthcare, education, food, housing, child, specifically things like I would like, and I've already mentioned this to Sherrod, and it's something that I'm going to work on with him to write a piece of legislation around. It's all going to be simple. It's all going to be easy. But I think an issue that could unify Americans together, because America is better when we are together. E pluribus unum, out of many one, is that I think every person could get behind a pro life idea of food for kids. Food for kids that is distributed through or at schools all year round, 2 meals a day at least for every child in the US. And that's it. Every child is guaranteed food. Parents will get there. But if your kids are healthy and your kids have food, we will be a better country just for that. Just for that. I think we could I think we could get there. And I wanted to call it the pro pro lunches for adolescents and youth, or play act. That way, something fun, something people can get behind. Because who wouldn't want to be behind the play act? So that we could be pro lunches or pro life for adolescents and youth, where we give them food, we offer kids food and stability. Like, that is social consciousness and action. Will it pass in this Congress? Maybe not. Is it worth doing anyway? Yes. Democrats specifically have gotten so tired and so boring because they don't do the things anyway just to do them. That's what democracy is all about, is flooding the zone with simple, easy ideas. And you can then point to, this is what I stand for. This is what I have voted on. This is what I have brought to the floor. This is what they refused to allow me to bring to the floor because I wanted to vote for the Play Act. I wanted to feed children, and they said no. Do it anyway. Do it anyway. The Democrats are so fucking afraid to do it anyway. So fucking do it. I hope that we have in this new crop of Democrats that are going to get elected, I hope we have folks who are strong enough to do what Chris Goldsmith said, which is name everything, put a bill out that says anything that has Trump's name on it has to also have Epstein's name on it, but Epstein comes first. So the Trump ballroom is the Epstein Trump ballroom. The anywhere there's a picture or flag hanging with Trump, it also has to include an Epstein flag. That way, the Trump class naval vessels that are going to come out are going to be the Epstein Trump class naval vessels. Is it stupid? Is it performative? Does it actually do anything? Not really. No, it is performative, but I'll rephrase that. Is it performative and does it do anything? Yes, it's performative and it does something. It shows everybody and it pisses him off. It shows everybody that you're willing to just stand up and make this guy feel small. Make this entire regime feel small. We need women and men, specifically any white man that wins in this next election. I have friends that I want to get on for some interviews. I've been in touch with Fred Wellman. I'm going to be reaching out again to him to get him on for a candidate interview because I'm going to ask them questions about this. Is will they endorse that type of behavior or do it themselves? Because we need that type of action. Because one, it'll piss them off. It'll piss Trump off and it'll focus him on the Epstein files all the fucking time. Two, it'll force them to oppose it. It'll force the Republicans to oppose and be against something. The Democrats don't stand for anything, so they fall for everything. I intentfully and with action this year are going to be standing for things. That way, we don't have to have this article up here of do people in Venezuela feel relief or dread of their government being toppled because we decided as the US to kidnap their head of state? The answer is both. Some feel relief, almost everyone feels dread. What does it mean next? Is we're trying to take over. And this is where I'll stop the conversation specifically around Venezuela, or I'll pause our conversation because this is where I think it's really good to move into some of the other areas that we've talked about too before, like Greenland, like Cuba, Mexico, Colombia, Panama, Ecuador, pretty much anywhere that doesn't already have a far right dictator who the US has tried to install in place or meddled in their elections, say Chile, Honduras, where we are actively trying to colonize and imperialize and empirize the entirety of the Americas. So what are we doing? It's not a transition of power. One, the same leadership in Venezuela is still fucking in place. The only one that's gone is Nicolas Maduro. We didn't change anything. We didn't topple a regime. We didn't do any domestic changes. We don't have boots on the ground policing the streets or policing their capital or running their government right now. We just have a handshake agreement that says, yep, maybe you'll do what we want. We're going to demand this by use of force only rather than through actual diplomacy. We're just going to come in and invade because these guys are too weak to discuss things and get good deals. They're not deal makers. They're mobsters. And that's how we need to view them. So we're taking over Venezuela, or we want to take over Venezuela for a corporatist grab, for corporate America, for the tech bros, for the oil companies if they want it, which I doubt they're going to be. They that's what monsters and thugs. Not this is inspired by the right. This is inspired by Italian mobs. This is inspired by the Jewish mafia. This is inspired by any of the mafias that are out there. This is what Donald Trump is. And right now, his mafia tactic um, is going to be to take over, like he's already said, a democratically elected state. Sorry if you keep losing audio. I'm not quite sure what's happening there. Nothing's changing on my end. Um, It could be my connection. I'm sorry, everyone. Um, but he's going to run the state using Marco Rubio and Pete Hegseth, which is dumb as shit. Because they have no idea what they're doing. Um, there's no step 2 or 3 of taking Nicolas Maduro. It was take the guy, and that was about it. Um, and so, what does this mean next for us, though? Is now that we've set this precedent, and if Congress is unwilling to do anything further or get a War Powers Resolution Act out or anything, the precedent will be set by our government that it is okay for the military, for the president to just take over another country or remove its head of state just because he doesn't like them. Yes, the president has always had the authority to be the commander in chief. That's their job. Their job is to be the commander in chief of the military as a civilian entity for oversight on military action. All of that action is supposed to be pre vetted and planned ahead of time, not just on the whim of one dude who is having a bad day. And so, yes, the military and the US has always been able to do this. Is that the right answer anyway? Fuck no. No, it's not. Because we've always had a precedent in place where if we were going to declare war, it has to be done by Congress. We have to then appropriate it by Congress. We do that so that the American people have a debate and have a voice in the discussion around war. That changed during the global war on terror and has changed throughout our US history because we're very bad at stopping authoritarianism in our own country. We are very good at exporting it to other countries. Is the war powers resolutions due to the global war on terror have allowed presidents to get away with much more authoritarian style military leadership. We have set our own stage for this to happen with the war on terror. The dog bells are going off. And you're right. No, our Congress doesn't work that way right now. We do not have a um, we do not have a functioning House of Congress because we have insurrectionists and traitors who are leading it. We have insurrectionists and traitors who are running our government. In 3 different branches, we have insurrectionists and traitors running our country. We have the new Confederacy taking over our country. They planted the Confederate flag on the Capitol during January 6th, 5 years ago. This is a new Confederacy. They want to install a separate system of government over the Constitution. They want to remove it. We need to talk about it like that. That's why Walter Ryan and I were discussing yesterday on my show with him, Notes of the Week, that maybe we should stop talking about them in the lens of well, we should be talking about them in the lens of fascism, but we also need to be making sure we talk about it in the lens of this is a white nationalist, white supremacy presidency. This is the KKK platform that is ruling America. We need to talk about it in that way because that hits home much more for people. Semantics are really important. And I think with all the investigations that should have led to criminal prosecutions, yes, he is a treasonous president. He is a treasonous president. We've known that for a long time. We're not good at prosecuting treason in the US. We've done it only a couple times, and we have never successfully impeached a president in the US either. What the fuck do we have those powers for if we're not going to use them? They're built in for a reason. They want to take away Article 1 powers and just give it to the executive branch. They want to give all of congressional powers and judicial powers to the president. They want a unitary executive. They want a dictator. What they're doing is treasonous because it is anti constitutional. It is meant to tear down the Constitution and replace it with a separate system of government. That is treason. That is basically the definition of treason. We need to be talking about it as though they are treasonous. We need to be reminding everyone that January 6th was a new Confederacy insurrection in the US. It was an attempt to reestablish the old Confederate states. They are taking the rights away so that they can have an old Confederate state. That's what Confederacy was white nationalism, was white supremacy, was fascism, was authoritarianism. That's what the Confederacy was. That's what the new Confederacy is. That is what the KKK platform that is running our country is. That is what Project 2025 is. That is what the invasion or kidnapping of Nicolas Maduro is. That is why we want to export it to Greenland. That's why we want to export it to Mexico, to Cuba, to Panama. We want to do it because we think it's ours. Manifest destiny is white nationalism. It says we deserve it because we're inherently better somehow. We inherently have the right to it. Stephen Miller talks about Greenland, that the US inherently has the right to own it, that it's ours, that we own it, that it's our nation. Well, that's not true. It is a part of the Danish Empire. Greenland belongs to the Danes, and that's not ours. We can try and take it, but that is a violation of NATO that would immediately call for the enactment of, I think it's Article 5, where all NATO countries would have to come together, except for the US, because we would be the ones breaking the treaty. They would come together to prevent it. The next step for our country right now is the execution of Manifest Destiny, which is to take over all of the Americas. That's what we're doing. Like, we should be talking about it in US terms. We should be talking about it through the lens of US history. We should be talking about it on things that people actually understand and feel in the US. They're not oligarchs, they're robber barons, because that's an American phrase. Oligarchs are Europeans. We don't need oligarchs. We have robber barons. We have our own things that have done it. We have slave owners and plantation holders that were robber barons. We don't need to use oligarch in America. People don't understand that word. Americans, white Americans specifically, don't care about that word. They hear it and they go, that's a European problem. That's a Russian problem. But if you talk about Manifest Destiny and you talk about robber barons, Americans get those. So let's start using terms that Americans understand and Americans feel. Manifest Destiny is white nationalism. It gave us the permission, and it gave the early Mormon church the permission to go across the US, go out west, eventually settle in Utah, and genocide the entirety of the native population that they saw. They just wiped them the fuck out, every single one of them. If Mormons came across Native Americans in early settlement as we expanded west during early Manifest Destiny days, they genocided and slaughtered Native Americans just because they weren't white enough, because they weren't good enough for white Jesus that Joseph Smith, a grifter and fraudster, sold them. Mormonism is based on a grifter and fraudster's lies. I don't have problems with many Mormons. They're really nice people. You got to admit the beginnings of your church, though, is you genocided a group of people as a white nationalist church. That's who you are. That is your history. That's your legacy. You are white nationalism. We are spreading that through a new Manifest Destiny into other countries. We've been doing it on the we have been doing it on the international stage in Latin America and South America for years. For 60 years or more, the CIA has been attempting small manifest destiny operations and installing different dictators to export our values of white supremacy. It is all about white supremacy. This this is what my focus will be for the next year until the end of time, whatever it has to be. Maybe I'll just never shut up about it. Is white supremacy hurts everyone. And my intent is to tear that shit down over the next year. My actions are going to be solely focused on that. My actions are going to prov- promote and provide, hopefully, legislative change or legislative options that can be used so that people can thrive, so that America can have some nice fucking things. And so that maybe we can stop exporting white nationalism and this exceptionalism bullshit, and we can actually export American values that are pro dignity in life. Because I still believe that in the original slogan of our country, I still believe in our founding ideals, which I don't revere our founding fathers. They were terrible people too. They were slightly more progressive in some way than many, and they put down a really great foundational document for us to follow. But they weren't great people, and that's okay. We can admit that people had flaws, and we can learn from them, and we can do better. But you know what they left us? They left us a nation where we are supposed to be out of many one. E pluribus unum, out of many one. That means out of many people, out of many colors, out of many statuses, out of many things, we create one more perfect union. We join together to create a more perfect union in the pursuit of happiness. Oppression is the opposite of happiness. You cannot be happy while you are oppressed and while you are abused and while you are beaten down. I believe in the ideals of what America is, what so many Americans are, not what we should be, but what so many of us are right now, right here in this moment. You, those who believe in dignity, those who believe in equality, those who believe that we need to preserve the union to make it more perfect, to strive for the ideal, to strive for exceptional as a people, as many, into one great nation. Not because we individually, as just one group of people, are better than any, because the whole makes us all better. Trump thinks it's out of one, many ideas pop out. Out of one asshole, many solutions can happen. That's not how it is. I'm going to fight for, and yeah, it'll fail, is I'm going to fight to have our national slogan returned to E pluribus unum rather than in God we trust. We have to do that. That's part of white nationalism. That's part of tearing down the white nationalist system is confronting confronting that we have a system that is completely built on the idea of subjugation and that it hurts everyone and that we need to get out of that system. And even if things are going to fail, we have to try anyway. Because if you don't try anyway, it will fail 100% of the time. Everything fails 100% of the time. Everything fails 100% of the time if we use the supremacy. And we need to continue push back on this system actively. Sorry, I'm getting a second show set up while I'm doing this. So I'm gonna be finishing up our I know I said I was gonna try and keep this short, but I guess I didn't. Um, is, um, and, um yeah, and sorry, going back to what I was saying is you lose every shot you don't take. You miss every shot you don't take. You if you just decide that you're not going to try, if you don't put in the effort, you're not going to win ever at all. You're always gonna lose. You're gonna lose you're gonna lose 100% of the time if you don't try. So we have to try. And just give me 1 second. I'm just doing something real quick. I'm messaging some friends, and um, I'll be right back with you guys. So, and we and it's and yeah, we will and so yeah, maybe we can do the um maybe we can try and find a better quote than Wayne Gretzky, yes. Um, is is maybe we should take those shots though anyways, even if we can't, like, even if we're not supposed to take those shots, or we think we're not going to win or get them or even succeed, we still have to try. We still have to try. If we don't try, we lose always. We lose all the time if we do not try. And so I'm gonna come out and I'm gonna try every day while we're out here. Yeah, maybe Eminem's one shot. And we are going to go out here and we're going to try every day. I'm going to work with Centered America. I'm going to work with my friends on all my friends through Banner and Backbone. I'm going to continue to reach out and work with others in our community and our growing community, such as the Find Out podcast, folks like Zev Shalev and Dean Blundell and Lev Parnas. Shane Yerrick and I have started working more closely with them at times, and we're really glad to be building that foundation. And that um, that system together because we need it. We all need that system of accountability. We need that system of folks who are out there telling the truth. So go follow folks like who I just named. Follow the show or the friends that I have normally on this show. Go follow Centered America and Sherrod Swaney and Gavin Favor, and follow Evan Fields, follow Melissa Corrigan, Lawrence Winterman, Walter Ryan. If you haven't looked or read Walter's review of Loretta Ross's book, um, what is it? Sorry, is um, Calling In, a book called Calling In, Loretta Ross. This this review, go read it. Be part of these communities, build these structures with us, and help us expand so that we can continue growing here on Banner and Backbone, but also we can be more action focused. I'm going to be starting. I know we have friends in the community who are working on networking and calendar systems and scheduling tools so that we can all have a much easier communication structure with each other. That's part of our action focus. We're also trying to uplift and continue to build out different podcasts and different shows and increase our voice and our reach. So what that takes, friends, is you guys sharing. Come share and subscribe to our community. Um, I'll pull up the Banner and Backbone QR code. Come if you're not on Substack, come scan this QR code. join Banner and Backbone here on Substack. If you are on Substack, hit the subscribe in the top corner, in the top left corner, and subscribe to both myself and Banner and Backbone Media. Um, this is where we host a lot of these shows, but we're trying to work on things also like increasing our ability to support through merchandise. We are going to expand into merch and all of it. And yes, Ellie Leonard is a huge. Ellie Leonard's fucking awesome. If you don't follow Ellie Leonard, thanks Marnie for putting her name in there too. Is I know I talked about her a little earlier with and Zev Shalev. Is she's a hero. She's doing some incredible stuff. Um, and so one of the things we want to do is be able to be more actionable in the community, give back, and use funds that we get from um, folks outside of your subscriber. Normal subscriptions is how we can support in other ways. So if there are ideas that you guys want, if you do want things like merchandise, let us know because I'd rather not make it if you guys don't really want it. I'm not here to make money off of you guys. I'd like to make a livable wage and a livable revenue stream for myself and give back as much as I can for the community. And so come support Banner and Backbone. Um, thank you for joining me today on this conversation. I'm going to be hopping off here now. I have another show that I'm going to be jumping over into. And so, everyone, please for joining us today. Thank you for being part of this discussion. We will be back next week. Hopefully, we'll be back joined with more of our guests we had at the beginning of the year, and things are being really busy. So, not a problem for us. We'll be back next week. I will be here every week, and we'll be continuing these discussions on action focus and how we can remain intentful throughout the year and what our actions can do to make a real impact, such as real legislation and trying, even if we know it's going to fail, because we have to try. So thanks, everyone. I appreciate y'all. Have a great day, and I will see y'all next week for another episode of The Window of Discussion.